Okay, welcome back, guys. So let's continue with we've discussed the salary journal, just basically what it's supposed to look like, as well as how you would account for those various columns and transferring it to your general ledger. So what we're going to do now is we're going to do multiple questions. So we're going to do question 8.3. So that is where we first have to record the salary journal. So that is the information that's recorded in question 8.3 will help you complete that journal. Then once we've completed the journal, question 8.4 asks us to transfer those salary journals now to the general ledger. So that's what the GL means on my slide. So once we've completed the salary journals, we're going to transfer it to our general ledger account. Then we're going to record the cash transactions. So that is the payments that we are physically making to SARS, to your medical aid fund, to your pension fund. So that is what your employer is going to pay over after at January after month end or at month end, depending on the information. So they will tell you when the payments are made. So then we're going to record that in our cash book payments journal, which we've discussed in Learning Unit 4. And then once we've recorded that into our cash books payments journal, we're going to transfer each of those columns then back to our general ledger. Now, what we said is your general ledger, once you've done the salaries journal as well as the equivalent payments of those salaries, your liabilities account should be zero. So whatever's on the left hand side should also be on the right hand side. We should not owe anyone money after that. The only accounts where amounts should still be in would be your expense accounts, which is your salary expenses, and then your additional UIF contributions, your pension fund contributions, your STL contributions. Those are generally the accounts that would still have an amount left over. So what I want you guys to do is in your textbooks, page 2, question 8.3. So in my textbook, it's on page 237, but it should be in yours on 241 or 42. So I've also put it on the slide. I know it's a bit blurry. The scanners are a bit difficult with the textbooks. So if we go through the first information, so question 8.3. So this is the information you're going to use to complete the salary journal in your workbook. Now, the information they've given you is Damien Julies earns a monthly basic salary of 28,980. So that is the first thing you were supposed to see, is the fact that they've given you the basic salary. Then they also tell you during the month he also received a travel allowance of 1,345 Rand. His pay as you earn for the month amounts to 4,663 Rand, and he also pays another 2,300 towards his medical aid fund, which is WMC medical aid. Now, the reason they give you that information is for your general ledger accounts that we're going to complete in question 8.4. Then he contributes 3,280 towards his pension fund, which is future pension fund. And then they tell you the employer contributes to his pension fund on a Rand for Rand basis. So when they tell you it's a Rand for Rand basis, it means whatever he's contributed, the employer will match that exactly in his contribution. And then Damien also has to pay 65 Rand per month for the staff social fund. And then Damien's UIF remuneration is 14,872, and his STL remuneration is 26,776. So here they've given you the UIF and the STL remuneration to calculate the UIF and STL deductions and contributions. So what they tell you is complete Damien's salary in the salaries journal for GoFast traders, and important note to round all of figures to the nearest whole number. So that means there should be no cents in your answer. It should be a full amount. In addition, amounts given are for illustrative purposes only. Okay, so all you need to know is you round it up to the nearest rand and you have that information. So I'm going to give you 5 minutes to complete it in your textbooks or in your workbooks. The columns I'm also going to share. I'm going to stop sharing this and then I'm going to share the Excel that shows the columns. Let me quickly see if I can find it. Okay, so your salary journals, this is what you have to complete here at the top. This is what it would look like. So if you do not have a workbook, you have a piece of paper, you can just write that down, what information you would complete in there. So I'm going to give you 5 minutes. Take question 8.3 and then go input all the information in that salaries journal, and then we're going to discuss it and see where you guys put the amounts. If you've got questions, you're allowed to ask me in the chat function. I am available. Okay, so all of you should have, based on the information given, sort of finished the salaries journal. It's not that this one is not that complex because it's only got one employee. Okay, so let's go through this and let's see how we should have completed it. So in the first column where we have to input the employee name, number and name, what information did you guys type in there? Just type your answers in the chat function for me. Okay, so Michaela said D. Julie. So that would be correct, yes. So because there was no employee number, you only put the initial and then the surname in there. Okay, what amount did you input into the basic salaries? What amount was given to us? Okay, the 28,980, that's correct. Then they told you we also received a travel allowance of 1,345 Rand, so that you would have imported into your travel allowance. Now we said gross salary is all of your income that you've earned before that. So that's why I said A is your basic salary, B is your travel allowance. So your gross salary is column A plus column B gives you column C. So if we add all of those together, you would receive your gross salary amount of 30,000. Okay. So did all of you get to a gross salary of 30,000 in your salary journals? You can just give me a thumbs up or smiley face or a cry face, depending on how you feel. Did all of you get the gross amount? Okay, great. So then the second part is, now we've looked at the gross salary. Now the second part is we're going to look at all the different deductions. So you can tell me what is the pay as you earn amount that we have to include in column D? Okay, so that's correct. Refilware, that's the 4,663 that was given to us. Okay, now the UIF amount, they didn't give us the UIF amount. How did you calculate the UIF amount? What information did they give you to assist you in calculating what the UIF amount should be? Okay, so I'm just going to repeat it. How did you calculate the UIF amount that needs to be recorded? Okay, so Tomelo says we take the 14,872, which was the UIF remuneration, and we multiply it with 1%. And that is correct. Now, because we had to round it up, we round it up to 149. Now, what I want to show you here is there's the 149. Now, I said whatever they deduct from our salary, our employer would contribute exactly the same. So while you do this UIF calculation there, you can go record the UIF contribution from the employer at the same time. So you already get 2 marks just for completing that. And you've done one calculation. So in a test or in the exam, I want you to, as you do this calculation, to also complete the other column at the same time, so that even if you don't finish, you can still get the marks for both of these columns at the end of the day. Okay, so let's look at what is the next one. So what did they say we contributed towards our medical aid fund? How much did we pay to the medical aid? Okay, that's correct, Michaela. So 2,300, so that we import into column F. How much have we paid for our pension fund? So what amount did Damien contribute? Okay, 3,280. Thank you, Rafiel Michaela. Okay, so our pension fund is that. But what did the information also say? It says that our employer contributes on a rand for rand basis. So that means this contribution amount there is exactly the same as what we have paid over to our pension funds. So you could have also completed the pension fund column at exactly the same time with the same amount. Okay, let's see what other information they gave us. They also say that Damien also pays 65 Rand per month for his social or staff social fund. So you'll see there's a staff social fund, so the 65 Rand we import there. Now to get to the total deductions, we add our pay-as-you-earn, UIF, medical aid, pension fund, and staff social fund. So all of those amounts that we've paid over, we add them together to get to our total deduction of 10,457 Rand. Okay, but what information did they also give us? They told us that the STL remuneration was 26,776 Rand. Now, where do I use that information in this journal? What column have I not completed yet? Okay, so Tomelo says the STL contribution by the employer. Okay, now who can tell me what is the calculation for the amount in that STL column, column L? Okay, so Refuel says it's that 26,776 multiplied with 1%, and that is correct. And we then just round it up. Oh, I see I made a typo here at the bottom. So we then round it up to 26,680. So that is the amount. Now the last thing that we have not done as yet is calculate the net salary. So that is this gross salary. Let's just make that green. So we take the gross salary, we deduct the total deductions, which will give us a net amount of 19,868. Okay, so now we've completed question 8.3. So that is what the salary journal looks like based on the information that we were given. Before we move on to recording it in our general ledger, do you guys have any questions on the journal itself? You can either pick up the mic and ask your question, or you can type it in the chat function for me. Okay, do you guys have any questions? If you're okay, you can also just put a smiley or thumbs up for me in the chat function, just so that I know you're okay. Okay, so I see 2 people are fine, and the rest of you, what's happening? Are you still thinking? Okay, so based on what I can see, most of you are okay with it. If you're not, you are welcome to ask me questions then afterwards if there's anything that you're wondering about. Okay, so question 8.4, which should be in your textbooks on page 244 to 245. It asks for post the salary journal, so this journal that you've now completed here at the top, and they ask to post it to the general ledger. So when they talk about the general ledger, we are talking about your T accounts. That looks as follows. So you've got the header at the top, which is your account name. Then you've got your folio number. Now those numbers are generally assigned to a specific general ledger account when you first import them into your accounting system. So that number would generally be given to you. If it's not given to you, don't worry about it. For now, it just indicates which balance sheet number it is or which account it is, so that when you complete it, you know where it goes. Okay, so on the left hand side, so this is your debit side, that is your credit side. We've got the date, so the physical date of the transaction. The details is normally your other account name, so the other, which other account will it go to? So if we, for example, debit this account, what account will be credited with the same amount? Your folio number is generally your journal number here at the top, and your amount will agree to one of these columns. Okay, now if we go through the salary journal, we said the gross salary, this amount, we will take to what account? We will take it to our normal salary expenses account. So let's just scroll down to salary expenses. Okay, let me just make it a little smaller so you can see it. Okay, so we said this gross amount will go to our salary expenses. Now, expenses are generally debited when we increase them. So what we will do is we will then enter that transaction at the 31st of May. We will say gross salaries, or if you said gross salary, I would also have marked it correct. SJ4, so that number there at the top, and it's 30,325. So these two amounts are exactly the same. Okay, so that's the first transaction that we have recorded. So we're recording the basic salary, travel allowance, all of that as one amount in our expense accounts. Okay, now our deductions, we will generally do them separately. Each and every one of them will be taken separately to an account as opposed to the full entire deductions. Now the reason for that is because some of them have to be paid over to different people. Now these generally go to a liability account, which is our B account. Okay, so let's take pay as you earn. We said pay as you earn, we will pay over to SARS. So that amount we will take to our EMP 201 control account, which is the account that we put everything that we pay to SARS over, as well as the UIF amount. So both of these amounts will go to SARS. So how we complete this is we include it in here. We say salaries, expenses, the 463. So let's just make this orange, light orange. So there it's light orange. So salary expenses, now we show it's an expense, but we show what type of expense. It is your pay as you earn. It is your SJ4, is your folio number, and it is exactly that same amount. Whereas the UIF amount, oh sorry, that is a yellow, would be the 149. Okay, but we also have our UIF and your SDL contributions that your employer makes that you also have to account for in this account. So if we import those two here, you'll see it's UIF contributions. Now the reason we say UIF contributions is because that is the expense account we will take it to. So these bottom two ones, we have to do an equivalent expense account to bring in the expense as well as the liability. So that is also the little yellow, and this one, let's make it a light green. But I said for these ones, we've got an equivalent expense account. So if we scroll down, you'll see we've got a UIF contribution account. So expense accounts are debited. And we've got an SDL contribution account, which will also be debited. So this is the yellow, and this is the light green. Okay, so only for the employer contributions do we have the liability account and the equivalent expense accounts. For the normal deductions in our salaries, we only take it to the liabilities account because of the fact that we're going to take the net amount also to our liabilities, and then all of these will net off the debits and the credits. Okay, so now we've done the pay as you earn, the UIF. Now we have to do the medical aid. So we said, okay, this is the amount that we have to pay over to the medical aid. So they gave you the medical aid name, so WM medical aid. So we say it's 2,300 that we have to pay over to the medical aid. So this is a creditors account. So we're going to credit the creditors account with the 2,300. That is what we will owe the medical aid based on what the employee's contribution has been deducted. Then the same with the staff contribution. This is the amount we pay over to the staff fund is the 65 Rand. So remember, these accounts always go to a liability account. These up here goes to an expense and a liabilities account. Okay, then the pension fund, this is our contribution that has been deducted. We firstly show salary expenses, and we show the 3,280 that we have contributed as the employee. But now we also said that the employer contributes the same amount. So this will also be taken to the liability account, but in this event, we take it to the pension fund contribution. So that's the expense account we need to create to bring in the employer contribution, but the amount will be exactly the same. So if we scroll down, we've got the expense account here, which we debit with the 3,280. So there we've accounted for the credit and here for the debit. Okay, so now we've accounted for all the expenses, but we have not accounted for the net salaries. So we said the net salaries goes to our creditors for salaries, which is also a liability account. That shows the net amount that we will pay at the end of the month. Now, if you take all of the credits, so you take that 19,000, the 4,663, the 148, which is also a salaries account, you take the medical aid one and the one that goes to the pension fund, just our contribution, and the social fund, you will get to 30,325, which is exactly the same as the gross salary. So that's how you can test whether your debit equals your credits. Okay. Now the last step you have to do when you do a T account like this is when there's multiple entries on the same side, you have them add them all together to get to the total that will have to be paid over to SARS in this case, which is 5,229. Okay, the medical aid was 2,300. Your pension fund is 6,560. Okay, and the others only have one account. So normally when there's one entry on the side, you just leave it like that. If there's multiples, you add it up. Okay, so that's how we transfer that salary journal to our general ledger accounts. Okay, before we move on to the cash book now, do you have any questions on this specifically? So transferring your salary journals to your general ledger. Is there anything that you're wondering about or that I need to re-explain? Okay, so Michaela, you just want me to re-explain the pension fund, how I did that. Is that what you're asking? Okay, so if we look at the deductions, you'll see under the deductions, there's an amount for pension fund, as well as under the employer's contribution, there's amount for the pension fund. Now, under the deductions, this is the amount that was deducted from your employee's salary. So I'm just going to make it a lighter blue just to help you out in the table at the bottom. So this deduction here at the top is the pension fund. So what the employee says, so that's the person that earns the salary, he says, okay, fine, to his company, can you please deduct the following from my salary and pay it over to my pension fund on my behalf before you pay out my salary. Now, because of the fact that we showed, this will go to your salary expenses, and all of these deductions will go to a liability account as well as the net salary, which will then equal the debit in your salaries. This will only go to your liability account. So your future pension fund is a liability account. That is the name of the pension fund which we paying the money over to. So we say salary expenses because of the fact that that is the total expense that is included in our gross salaries. So that 3,280, which the employee said they can deduct from his salary, goes to the first line item, which is the 3,280. Okay, and that goes to salary expenses, which will then net off to the net salaries that we pay out. But the information also said the employer will also contribute to your employees' pension fund, but because of the fact that this contribution is not taken into account in the net salary that is paid out, we now have to bring in this entry into our books. Now, to bring it into the books, you have to have a debit and a credit entry in order to balance it. Because in this case here, we've got a debit and all of these credits that net it off so that the debits equal the credits. Now, for the employer entry, we have to bring in the debit and the credit. Now, this is the credit entry, this is the liability. And the debit entry will go to your pension fund account. Now, because of the fact that the amounts are the same, you would enter the same amounts in here, but your details will change to your expense account name. So your pension fund contribution account, which we then, so we credited your future pension fund, but now we have to debit your pension fund contribution, so your expense account, with that same amount in order to have an equivalent debit and credit amount. So all you have to remember when you do the liability for the pension fund, and they tell you that your employer contributes as well, you will have two entries. One will go to salary expenses, the other one will go to a pension fund contribution, your expense account, and then you will have an equivalent debit in that expense account to balance this last entry. And then you would just add them together to show what is the total amount that our employer will actually pay over to the pension fund. Explain what you are wondering about, or is there anything else that you want to clarify? Okay, is there any other questions that you guys have before we move on to the payment of these entries? You can just indicate with a thumbs up if you're right for us to move on. Okay, are you guys fine for us to go on to question 8.5? Can you just indicate with a thumbs up if you're right for me to move on? Okay, so in my textbook on page 242, question 5 says it should be on your books on page 246 or 47. Okay, so the first part of the question is it says make all outstanding payments for question 8.4 on the last day of the month. So they've actually made all the payments on the 31st of May. And then the second part is to then record those journals into the general ledger. Okay, so let's look at what that means. So what I've done is I've just transferred the information from question 8.3 at the top so that you guys can see all the information. So what they said is on the 31st of May, we first now have to do all the outstanding payments. So what that means is we have to complete the cash book payments account and indicate all the payments that were made. Now we said the payments would be your pay as you earn, your UIF, your medical aid, your pension fund would be paid over, generally your social fund, and then the net salary. So we don't pay the gross salary, we pay all of these, but included in your pay as you earn and your UIF and pension fund would be your employer contributions as well. Okay, so your document number in this event would be an EFT because we're going to put it into our bank account. The date would be the 31st for all of those transactions. Now the name of your payee would be based on who are we paying. So the first one, pay as you earn and UIF, we would generally pay over to, okay, let's start with the net salary. So the net salary would go to D. Julie's. So that is our employee we are paying. We will pay out of the bank account, we will pay the net amount of 19,868 to D. Julie's. Okay, so that is the bank account. Then the next person we would generally pay, okay, let me just unhide it here, is SARS. Now for SARS, we will pay your pay as you earn UIF as well as STL. So any types of taxes will be paid over to SARS. Okay. Now that would mean so the last thing, because we do not have a creditors for salaries account, that is the general ledger account which that payment goes to, we put it under sundries account, that 19,000. Now your SARS payment will be, all of these blue ones will be added together to get to an amount of 5,229. And that will be taken to our general ledger account, which is the EMP 201 contra account, because that is the liability account where we've recorded everything that needs to go to SARS. Okay. But now we also know we still need to pay medical aid, pension fund, and social fund. So the next one we do is you can do the medical aid or the pension fund. So now I've done the pension fund first. So we take the 3,280, which was deducted from your employer's salary, and we add the amount that the employer contributes, which gives us 6,560 rand, and we take that to the futures pension fund account. Okay, so that's the general ledger account that we've accounted that to. Then we've got our medical aid, which is WMCA medical aid, and that amount would be 2,300. And because we don't have a column for that, we also take it to the sundry accounts, but take it to the WMCA medical aid account. And then the last one is your social staff social fund is the 65 rand, and that would also go there. Now, normally we would have a full month's worth of entries, so we would add the bank account, the sundry account balances. Now, this part here is only for illustrative purposes. We won't necessarily ask that in the question, but I just want to show you how the bank component of it is recorded as well. Now the next step they said is, okay, now you've recorded it in your cash book payments, each of the separate entries, but now we have to take it to our general ledger accounts. Now I've already left the information that we've completed in 8.4 in here. Now the first thing we've paid creditors for salaries. Now when we pay that creditors for salaries account, we have to debit it. We're making it less. So now what will happen is the debit and the credit is exactly the same, which means the balance that is carried over to the following month is zero. That means there is no amount outstanding at the end of May. Then the next one is SARS, is the 5,229. So on this one, you can see we owed SARS 5,229. Now we've paid that full amount, so we debit the account with that, and then a zero balance will be carried over. And we do the same for our medical aid and our pension fund. So you apply the same concept for all of them. Okay, and you'll see the folio number is our cash book payments journal 4. And the account name is bank because that's where the money is coming out of. And we do the same for the social fund. Now this entry here, the bank, is just to show you if we add all of these expenses, it was 34,000 Rand that we've paid out of the bank. So your bank account would be credited with that amount, which would be your total payments, to show that your bank account has decreased. Now, in your textbooks, they don't show you this entry there because of the fact that a cash book payment journal would generally have a lot more transactions in it. But this I've just included here for illustrative purposes. And that is basically how you do it. So you do not touch your nominal accounts, which is your income statement accounts. Those accounts will stay exactly the same. It is only your financial position or your balance sheet accounts that would have a debit and a credit entry, which would then ensure that the balance that is carried over would be zero. And that is how you account for the cash payments in the general ledger. Okay, do you guys have any questions on this before we take a break? You can just type in the chat function if you've got questions, or you can put on your mic and just chat to me, whichever way you prefer. Are you guys okay with what we've done just now? Okay, you can just indicate in the chat function, are you okay with what we've done now, yes or no, or is there anything specific that I need to re-explain? Okay, so I see Michaela is fine. What about the rest of you? Are you okay with what we've discussed? Are you happy with it? Rafilwe says it's fine. Okay, so what we'll do is we're going to take a 10-minute break. Then we're going to move on to accounting for wages. So if you can be back 1 past 10, then we'll continue with our next session. Okay, thanks guys.